We've all been there before, playing Elden Ring, walking around on our trusty steed Torrent. Maybe you're looking for a new shortcut, or maybe you just enjoy the climbing mechanics. But there's one thing I can tell you for sure. Torrent is not a horse. Torrent is a goat. If you've ever watched footage of mountain goats climbing on mountains, it's almost 1-to-1. It's undeniable.
He's the goat! A goat!
Okay, now that that's out of the way, back to the clips. You may discover on your journey through the lands between many shortcuts or many gaps that Torrent can easily jump with his double jump. Or maybe a ledge that you can jump to, or maybe fall down like this one. These types of shortcuts are all over the lands between. You just have to find them. Just take your time, drop slowly, don't jump or dash, and you'll be totally fine.
Nice.
Many might not seem possible at first, but once you get comfortable with Torrent's controls, nearly anything becomes possible. Occasionally, you may even find a skip. One that I found very early on is it's actually quicker to get to Gowry's shack from Church of the Plague, but only if you know how to drop down the cliff properly. Just make sure you land at least once while sliding, or this will happen.
You serious?
Controlling Torrent may seem a little janky at first, but once you get used to it, you really do have almost absolute control. The skill ceiling for what you can perform is actually incredibly high. Here are some examples I thought of to showcase this. Notice how in the second two, I always land on the rubble and I make it exactly to the corner at the end.
Nice.
Now, let's go over some of the techniques I've learned. They're all simple, but some of them are very counterintuitive. The first one is just using your second jump to aim where you land. It's very easy. Just hold the direction when you go to do your second jump. Just aim at the wall, double jump, and you'll make it every time. The next one is a little obscure, but it's very simple. Basically, Torrent has two pivot animations. I call them a soft and a hard pivot. Both are done by flicking the stick in the opposite direction that Torrent is facing. One is done by moving it slightly, and one is done by doing it very hard. Soft pivots are absolutely essential if you don't want to fall off of a narrow space you're standing on. These are what I call short hops, and you can do them just by tapping jump twice in a row without holding a direction. The important thing to remember is not to panic. Try not to always hold forward and not to waste your second jump. Learning how to properly save and quit can also save you a ton of time. I've got a video here on how to do that if you'd like. Now let's see what this all looks like when put together. Use short hops to make sure I don't overshoot the ledge. Try not to always hold forward. Don't panic. Use my second jump to adjust myself. Only use my first jump if I can. And there, now you can teabag America like you've always dreamt of. Now to put these techniques to some practical use. Here's an easy way to get down to the Rain of Arrows Ash of War. This one can be quite difficult. You have to be really precise where you land. It's much better to fall down than to jump. And if you fall down here, you may have to use short hops to get back up. I tend to use a single jump here to make sure I don't overshoot. If you miss this branch, you may have to readjust with your second jump, and you should be able to make it down there from here. The next one is a quite well hidden secret. Most people will never find this their first playthrough. It's a dagger called the Cincadea, I believe. The hardest part of this one is making sure you survive dropping down to these branches. But once you get down to the actual building structure, it's quite easy. Just make sure you follow the sides and don't get killed by the bats. They are scaled to endgame because it's Dragon Burrow though, so be careful. Just stick to the ledges on the wall and you'll be fine as long as you either take it slow and kill the bats or avoid them completely.
That's why he's the GOAT!
And your reward will be down in this far corner. Now here's a shortcut I discovered myself. It's just a quick way to get down to the Minor Erdtree or the catacombs. Notice how I use the soft pivots in order to adjust my angle so I could fall properly. And then once I'm on the branch, I can also use them to turn around. And I never use my double jump just in case I need to save myself, which I don't.
Very good.
Here's one that can save you a bit of time in the DLC. Here's an easy skip in order to get to the second Frenzy Village. Getting up on this first rock can be a bit tricky, but once you get it, it's easy. Not only do you get to avoid the Eye of Sauron, but you also get a free grace. Here's a really easy one, super early game that anyone can do. It allows you to skip an entire dungeon and grab the Regalia of Eocade straight sword from outside on this cliff here. There really are a lot of crazy things you can do with Torrent, but I keep asking myself, how far can you really push this? As I'm sure you've noticed, there's tons of these rock formations all throughout the lands between, and they're very obviously meant to be climbable. I'm gonna speed the first little bit up because here I'm just experimenting. This first one here is very basic, as it's the first one I discovered. This is probably from first month of release, I guess. As you can probably tell by my movement, I'm very new at this. I hadn't discovered most of the techniques that I know about now. This is a prime example of why you should not always hold forward, as you will generally overshoot your destination. Not all of these are super useful, but they do have their use possibly on a first playthrough, maybe as a shortcut, or if you haven't gotten to an area. There isn't anything too crazy going on with this one. It's just the first one I discovered, so I figured I would include it.
Success!
Now here's where things get really crazy. Everybody knows you can use these gravestones to drop down in many areas. But did you know you can actually climb up most of them? This one has a bit more of a practical use than the last one. It's a quick way to get up to Lanciax, and is by far the easiest of this type of climb that I have found. You just need to figure out what Torrent can and can't stand on. The answer is he can stand on most things, just like a goat. All you really need is enough space to fit his front hooves, and you're pretty much good most of the time. Sometimes you can stand still, sometimes you need to hold forward to keep running, but most of the time you'll be able to stand anywhere. This next one I would consider the most practical of any of these skips. If you're sick of wandering around the mountaintops of the giants just to get the Crimsonwhorl Bubbletear, though this is for you. Ever since discovering this, I've literally used this on every playthrough because I legitimately hate that part of this area. This one also is not very difficult. You just have to find which ledges to jump to. There's no real precision here, just knowing where to go. Never again are you going to have to deal with handjob hallway from hell. This next one is a quick and easy way to get to the Manor Erdtree in the Consecrated Snowfields.
That was easy.
The last one I've got for you today is from the DLC. I actually discovered this recently. It serves some practical use if you're wishing to skip Castle Ensis and going around, or if you'd like to go directly to Jagged Peak. It's very useful. Just speeding up my first two failed attempts here. I'll play the actual successful attempt at regular speed though. I just leave some of these failed attempts in to give you a sense of how exactly I experiment with this sort of thing. I've been experimenting with these gravestones for a while now, and I do believe that at least 80% of them are actually climbable from the bottom. This video is meant more as a simple tips and tricks sort of guide with some examples, so I'm not including everything I've found here. I'm always on the lookout for more of these, but if there's any that you've found that I haven't included, please let me know in the comments below.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
I've crossed the edge where time disappears. My life has been taken by the charm of the sun. My conscience is clear.